Hey guys, it's Ostomonday, and this week I wanted to talk about my experience when I had sepsis. So the reason for my ostomy was the fact that I had a colonoscopy and my colon perforated. We didn't know that it had perforated straight away, so it wasn't like, I was having the colonoscopy and they were like, whoops. They didn't know it actually happened, and it was probably another 2 weeks when I then had another MRI scan because I still wasn't improving from the medication that I was on. So they had another look to see exactly what was going on with an MRI scan, and that's when they discovered the abscess, where basically because of the perforation things weren't going the usual way out of the body, so it was all collecting in my body cavity, and obviously my body was becoming more and more infected. So yeah, that wasn't particularly pleasant, but those sort of 2 weeks was when I really started to deteriorate. Obviously my body was, infected, so of course I would sort of get worse and worse. And physically I was very, very weak. I was in so much pain, it was so painful. And because where the perforation was, it was like where my hip area was, and it was like I couldn't walk. It's like I couldn't put any sort of pressure on my hip. It's like, I don't know if you've ever had this experience where if you've walked on your hip and all of a sudden your hip kind of gives away and you do that weird sort of like wiggle. It kind of felt like that, but all the time, but also with a lot of pain. And obviously at the time we didn't know that there was a perforation. So like my doctors were saying, oh, it could be that it's a joint issue because you're on steroids, and steroids can lead to, problems with joints and bone density and all this kind of stuff. So they kind of thought, oh, it's probably just your joints giving up, or it's arthritis or something. So they didn't really investigate. And it wasn't until my GP had been chatting to someone else, like a fellow, a peer, a fellow consultant, that they came up with this idea that maybe it was a psoas abscess, which was, this abscess of collecting all this stuff. So anyway, before I had my MRI scan, like the weeks between the colonoscopy and the MRI scan, aside from the pain and, how horrible I felt, I felt really low on energy, like my skin was all dull, my hair was falling out, like I was tiny, I was so underweight because like my bowel was so damaged at this point. And the sepsis was really starting to affect not just the physical side, but the mental side of me. And I remember my mum saying that I was saying all this stuff that I can't really remember now, but I was saying all this stuff that was completely irrational. And I remember my mum saying, look, you're being irrational. But at the time, I thought I was thinking completely clearly. And like she was like freaking out at the idea that I was just like this psycho. Like it was just like I was a complete psycho, and I was just like, you don't understand, you don't know what it's like for me. When really she was going through it as well as a carer, she was going through a lot as well. But when I was in that situation, I kind of felt a bit self-centered, and it was very kind of like all I could think about was how much pain I was in and stuff. So yeah, that was interesting. But the main effect that the sepsis has had on me is my memory. My memory at the time, as well as now, has been affected beyond doubt. At the time, when it was like obviously in full swing, I was slurring. It was almost like I was drunk. I was slurring. I couldn't remember words, like very simple words I just couldn't remember. It was almost like a stammer where I'd try and say a word and then I struggled with it. And even now I often have that where I'll try and say something and it sounds perfectly clear in my head, but then when I watch it back on video, or if I think about what I'm saying, I'm actually just stumbling over words. And I never really did that much. And it's only since that sepsis that it had, I'd started doing that. And like I say, the memory was another big thing. Like I couldn't remember what I'd done the day before, or even like an hour before. Like my short-term memory was just completely shocking. And now, I remember who I am, I remember like birthdays and who people are, but if you ask me to try and remember like big periods of my life, like say a family holiday, I can't remember. And it could have been the most interesting holiday ever, and I don't think I'd remember it. Nowadays it's not too bad, and short term wise I tend to be okay. Like I'll remember what I did the day before and stuff. There's certain things that I'll forget, and I do tend to write a lot of things down, and I think that's why I like videoing and vlogging so much, is because I can look back on stuff and remember, whereas if I don't, then I forget what's happened. But say if I'm trying to remember something that happened in my teens or like my childhood, like I can't remember. Those memories seem to have just gone. And I don't think they have gone, I think they're in there somewhere, but I think the fact that with sepsis, you know, your blood pressure drops and you're not getting as much oxygen to the brain as you should. So I think I was just, it was like I was drunk, you know, and it's like when you wake up the next day and you've got that kind of mental block where you can't remember what happened the night before. That's how it feels, but for massive chunks of my life. And it's like, what actually happened? And then I got to the point where I'm like, I'm trying to remember, but then I worry that I'm just making it up. So it's just really, really patchy and really strange. And sometimes it gets me down. Like sometimes I'll laugh about it with Chris and we'll sort of joke about how forgetful I am and how I have to write everything down. And sometimes I can look at it in a sort of light-hearted way. But every now and then I do kind of feel quite down about it, and kind of, especially when it's like people are reminiscing about something and I like have no recollection of it whatsoever, even though they're saying, but you were there, can you not remember? And I'm like, no, I can't remember it. And it just sucks because I used to love looking back on like and paying attention to like the little things that not everyone notices. And now I can't remember all those little things that I always used to like, and it just, I don't know, it just sucks sometimes. But it's just something that I didn't think anything, like I don't think, it's just weird to think that something that happened to me physically could affect me mentally. But obviously it's the brain and that is a physical thing, so of course it does. But I don't know, it kind of just psychologically it affected me more than I thought it would. So yeah, I don't really know that much about it, and I'm currently looking more into, you know, sepsis and how it affects people, and also about the memory thing. So if you have any information about sepsis and how it can affect the memory, please do let me know. I'd be really interested, because like I say, it's affected my memory, and I just think more people need to be aware of the symptoms of sepsis and also how it can affect people long term and short term. Anyway, that's it for this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.